So first, let's meet Hiša van Zanten from Wageningen University, Associate Professor at the Farming System Ecology Group at WR. She's an expert in the domain of circular food productions. Then we are also welcoming Anna Ross, Hiša Franko. She's a Slovenian chef, a sport and travel enthusiastic. From the young ages, she graduated in international and diplomatic science in Italy. She's a polyglot and much more, and also a self-taught cook. In our panel today, also David Muñoz from DiverXO, chef and owner, Street XO restaurants, DiverXO, and he's born in Madrid. We already met before, internationally recognized for his cooking and famous restaurants. Also 3 Michelin stars. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are also welcoming Antonia Klugmann from Venco. She's the chef and owner of this Italian Michelin-starred restaurant located in Dolenja del Collio, a village close to the Slovenian border. It wasn't until halfway through her law degree that she fell in love with cuisine, so really curious to find out what she has to share. Also welcome Joris Bijdendijk from RIJKS. He's the executive chef of restaurant RIJKS. Opened the doors in November 2014 and introduced as the kitchen of the lowlands, characterized by Dutch products in its simplicity. And also joining us online is Lisa Lesch Palmer, National Geographic Award-winning author and science journalist who has covered a wide range of stories on environment, synthetic biology, conservation, food security. So we are also really happy she could join us today to share with us her findings. But first, ladies and gentlemen, for setting the scene, as they say, it is Hiša van Zanten who will give us a brief introductory summary about sustainability. So Hiša, thanks a lot for joining us. Welcome here.
Thank you so much.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, you have prepared for us a nice presentation. Just
yes,
as an introduction, we are ready for you, Hiša.
Thank you so much. Let me check because I can hear myself.
We can hear you very well.
Okay, I will just start. So I'm Hiša van Zanten and I'm an associate professor at the Farming Systems Ecology Group at Wageningen University. And what I aim to do today, what is my aim for today, is to actually give you some insight on how can you make your meals and dishes more sustainable. So if we talk about sustainability, what are we actually talking about? So if we talk about sustainability, it's most of the time about people, planet, and profit. And if we talk about people, then we talk, for example, about providing enough nutrients for a growing population. But we also talk about topics such as animal welfare. If we talk about profit, we also talk about a fair price. And if we talk about planet, we talk mainly about the environmental impact in terms of, for example, biodiversity loss or climate change. So in my work, I mainly focus on how can we feed a growing population with healthy food within the boundaries of our planet. And this is important, because we all know that food production, and especially the production of animal source food, has a large impact on the environment. And it's because of that that a lot of people actually advise us to start consuming a vegan diet. Here in this figure you see this actually illustrated. What you can see is the amount of land which is needed to produce a certain amount of proteins. The orange bars are the animal-based products, and the green bars are the plant-based products. So what you can see is that the orange bars, so the animal-based products, in general indeed use more land to produce proteins. But this is actually based on the current situation. And we also have the potential to redesign the food system. So in this figure, you can see an example of such redesigns. The first principle is that we respect the planetary boundaries, and the second one is that we produce enough healthy food for a growing population. And we can make the food system more sustainable by avoiding food waste or waste in general. And if we produce waste, we can actually use it as, for example, a feed for animals. So we are actually using animals as a kind of recycler. What you can see furthermore in this picture is that we are using the manure from the animals in the most efficient way. We also increase biodiversity on our fields. We think about the soil quality, and we make use of new technologies, such as, for example, sustainable energy sources. So in the redesign that I just showed you, we are actually only feeding the animals with leftover streams, so products that we cannot or do not want to consume. In one of our studies, we looked at how much animal source food we could potentially produce if we only feed animals with leftover streams. And we found a range between 9 and 23 grams of protein per person per day, which is about 2/3 of the proteins that we are currently consuming. So if you actually would replace this part of animal source food with plant-based products, then we would need again more arable land. And that brings me to the next figure. So what you can see in this figure is the amount of animal source food in a diet in terms of protein and the related amount of arable land use for this particular diet. And then you can see 3 different diets: a vegan diet, our current diet, and a circular diet in which we are only feeding the animals with the leftover streams. And what you see is that the amount of arable land that we use is lowest on the moment that we consume a small amount of animal source food, lower compared to a vegan diet and much lower compared to our current diet. So over the last years, we performed a lot of studies about this, and we actually found that the role of animals depend on what we consume and the utilization capacities of the animals themselves. So what you can see in this figure are the greenhouse gas emissions in terms of CO2 equivalents per person per year. And you see this red bar. And this red bar red line actually represent a boundary. So for our food production, we should actually stay below the 500 kilos of CO2 equivalents per person per year. You also see again the total grams of animal source food per person per day in a diet. And what you can see here is that if we would consume a healthy diet, in which we also produce our food in a circular system, then we actually reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. While if we actually would consume a circular diet, then we actually are still below this red line, and we can consume much more animal source food, but we are not necessarily consuming a healthy diet. And with this, I will just give you one example. Think about, for example, if we would consume refined grains instead of whole grains. So consuming whole grains is more healthy, but then we have less leftovers available which we could feed to our animals. So therefore, the amount of animal source food which we could produce is lower. So this figure shows that from a health perspective, it's better to consume a small amount of animal source food in a circular system, while we could produce in principle more animal source food if we would not necessarily take into considerations those health aspects. We also found that the role of the animals actually depends on their own utilization capacity. We found that in a circular food system, we are actually mainly using dairy systems. So we mainly produce milk, but also the associated amount of meat. We are feeding our pigs with mainly food waste. Pigs are not so picky, and it's more safe to actually feed them with food waste compared to other animals. And we are also having a small amount of laying hens, which provide a unique, very nutritious products, the eggs. So what you can see is that each animal in this food system actually have their own role. What I would like to show you is that feeding animals with leftovers is not only a theoretical exercise, but is something which is happening in reality. Could you please play the video? Thank you.
Een circulair voedselsysteem is een systeem waar we in de toekomst naartoe willen, om ervoor te zorgen dat we voldoende voedsel kunnen blijven produceren binnen de grenzen van onze planeet. Waarbij we dus bijvoorbeeld zo min mogelijk land willen gebruiken of zo min mogelijk water. Zodat we de aarde niet uitputten, terwijl iedereen wel beschikking heeft tot voldoende voedsel. Ik ben Hiša van Zanten en ik onderzoek de rol van het dier in een circulair voedselsysteem. De rol van dieren in een circulair voedselsysteem is dat ze eigenlijk reststromen kunnen eten. Dit bedrijf hier verzamelen ze die reststromen en daar gaan ze uiteindelijk weer veevoer van maken. Ja, dat zijn producten die anders weggegooid zouden worden. Het zijn producten die we niet kunnen of willen eten. Wat we op dit moment ook zien is dat dieren met producten worden gevoerd, zoals granen, die wij ook kunnen eten. En daardoor ontstaat er eigenlijk een beetje een competitie om die granen, of we die nou aan dieren gaan geven of aan de mens. Al die producten komen binnen in de fabriek en een heel proces komt eraan te pas en uiteindelijk hebben we een brokje. Bij kipsten hebben we gekeken met hun overlegd van nou, wat voor een voer zouden die kippen nou eigenlijk moeten hebben om toch ervoor te zorgen dat ze die eieren nog kunnen leggen. Maar wel een voer wat dus alleen maar bestaat uit restproducten. Want ieder dier heeft natuurlijk zijn eigen unieke eigenschappen. En wat ik wil weten is welk dier we nou het beste kunnen gebruiken om welk restproduct uiteindelijk om te zetten naar bijvoorbeeld melk of vlees of eieren. Die hoeveelheid aan reststromen die we hebben is natuurlijk beperkt, beschikbaar. Dat betekent ook dat er een grens zit aan de hoeveelheid dierlijke producten die we kunnen produceren. En op dit moment zien we, als we dus naar zo'n circulair voedselsysteem toe zouden willen, dat we in Europa de hoeveelheid dierlijk product wat we nu eten tenminste moeten halveren. Ik vind het heel leuk om dat te zien dat het in de praktijk daadwerkelijk een bedrijf is wat dit oppakt en wat gewoon alleen maar reststromen aan zijn dieren voert. Omdat dat aangeeft dat we dus langzaam echt naar zo'n circulair voedselsysteem toe moeten. Het is niet alleen een theoretisch iets wat nu ontwikkeld is, maar het is ook iets wat nu door de praktijk wordt opgepakt.
Thank you. So what I would like to end with is that I would like to stress that each of you can be a game changer, and together we can actually make the food system more sustainable. So what are things that you can do? First of all, reduce the amount of meat or animal products in your meals. So make vegan and vegetarian meals relatively more cheap compared to, for example, meals with a larger amount of meat. And also increase the offers, the possibilities of vegan and vegetarian meals. And if you include meals in your include meat in your meals, then please use meat from dairy or from laying hens. And if possible, select animals that are fed with products that we cannot or do not want to consume ourselves, such as food waste or co-products or grass resources. And try to use whole products. Another topic is try to use local products, because by doing so you actually reduce the emissions related to transportation, which also means that we should actually consume more products which are produced in a certain season. And last of all, provide information about the production of the food that you are using, because that actually helps the consumers to get more insight in how can they also make at home their meals more sustainable. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions also in the future, please feel free to contact me.
Very much, dear Hannah. So, yes, let's talk sustainability. We already mentioned a lot of things. Hannah shared with us a lot of things. But what is exactly for you sustainability? That's what I would like to know. Anna, for you, for example, what is it?
Does it work? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Amazing.
perfectly.
Well, I believe, first of all, thank you everyone who is here for listening. I hope you're going to resist, because that is a large topic that has sub-entered the charity topic that has been a hot topic a few years ago. And I believe not everybody really understands what sustainability is. Because you can have a parameter that is very fixed for a city, and then the same parameter will never work for countryside. So I can tell you what I believe is sustainability for Hiša Franko, which is a small restaurant on a Slovenian countryside, which has nothing to do with a big city. We are 1,000 people living around. And yeah, we need to find a way how to survive, how to make a fine dining restaurant in the wilderness, but at the same time completely supporting the local environment. First of all, I believe that sustainability is understanding what were traditions of a particular place. Now, why? Because if you look hundreds of years ago, people were not overfeeding themselves. They were eating exactly what the nature was giving at one particular time and in one particular place. Why eating, I don't know, cherries in the winter, strawberries in the autumn? Because they're not growing. Why don't you go outside and look for what is really growing around you? That's the first step when you are cooking on a remote environment. The second is, do you know what happens when actually a valley, like the Socha Valley where Hiša Franko is, gets empty of young people who could work and who could continue economy of a place? It's exactly what's happening with us, because when I was a child, being a farmer meant being a secondary citizen of a place where we were all divided into groups. One was a group of farmers and one was a group of non-farmers. And so the group of non-farmers, which I actually belong to because my father is a doctor and my mother is a journalist, was like judging the farmers because they had a smell of a farm. Mm-hmm. In the morning they were like coming late to school because they were still milking and they were in with cows and working with animals. And today, if you ask my son, which I believe it's a big improvement for the society, he says to be a farmer is a great thing. When I was a kid, to say a farmer to be a farmer is a great thing was actually something nobody would ever say, and I didn't say it, and I will be very honest with you. But today, to understand if Socha Valley can survive, and that is also sustainability, because sustainability is not just in what we eat, but it is in the whole social and economical view of the place. It means that the valley needs to stay alive, and people need to have, a motive why to stay and how to work. So I believe to evaluate being a farmer, an ecological farmer, or a farmer, a biodynamic farmer, or a farmer who evaluates old traditions is a big thing, because it means that the day in 30 years, my grandchildren will understand how the life once was in the Socha Valley, and since the industrialization is not possible, it is gonna survive in only that precise, particular way, which means understanding what tradition really is. And a little bit Hiša Franko is doing it in the past 20 years since I'm running it together with Walter. We somehow created a group of more than 100 people who are working with us in direct or indirect way, some are foraging for us, some are having gardens, some are giving us cheese, some butter, some just collecting berries in a particular area. But what does that mean? It means that we are having an incredible food that has never traveled, which is very sustainable. Mm-hmm. On the other side, the guest who comes to the house has an original product that has never traveled, which is sustainable again. And then the farmer can survive, and he can pass the business to his grandchild, who is actually understanding that being a farmer is actually can work and someone can stay. So it means we don't have any young brain leaving the valley, but the valley can be alive. And it is the whole system. It's a kind of an ecosystem that works. And for me, the world of sustainability or the word sustainability is not on that precise word, I have to be vegan or vegetarian. I will never say that. I don't believe in it. And believe me, Hiša Franko is one of a really vegetable-oriented restaurant, but almost every dish has a little contamination with the meat, a little one. It's how we have always been eating. How can I forget our traditions? And because when our grandparents were alive, we were not speaking about the world hunger, which we will be speaking after COVID and very soon, because people knew how to eat, not too much, very equilibrated, and that's the only way that I believe the sustainability should bring us to.
Yes.
Now, if you ask me if I eat junk food sometimes, of course I do. Do my children eat very healthy food? Yes, they do. You know why they do? Because they were growing up with farmers, with something Hiša Franko has always been supporting, and today they would always turn around the product and ask, is it local? Is it in season? Yes, then I'll eat it. And that is the way it goes, passing to a new generation, something that is a lot bigger than one single word, which is called sustainability, but it's about our future. That's how I see things.
So for you it is tradition and a whole ecosystem. It's not only looking at plastic and reusing water. It's a very nice story, and luckily for you, you can share it and you experienced it, but I can imagine that for others who were, like me, raised in the city, the word maybe has another meaning or not for you. David, was it?
Can I just add one little thing?
Yes, of course.
Because when you talk about sustainability and you don't want to be cheap, you can really look over the story in a much bigger picture. For instance, in Hiša Franko this year, we started working with a local Slovenian fashion designer, which is working 100% with eco materials. So I'm talking about wood fibers, apple fibers, eco cotton, natural prints. And when you see a person that approaches you in Hiša, is a person that is dressed in a completely natural way. So whatever is around us is actually trying to support the environment. And again, because sustainability is not just about the environment, but it is about keeping environment alive and traditions alive, keeping the nature in the restaurant very much alive.
Very nice story. Thank you very much, Anna. I think we all would now to go to her place and to see. Yeah, but David, what is it for you, sustainability? And do you think that it's feasible for fine dining to really do it all the way?
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about sustainability after Anna. Yeah. I think the responsibility of the restaurants, like our restaurants and some big restaurants all over the world, is to be an example for the rest of the people, for the big consume. It's true that now trying to eradicate the consume of animal protein is quite difficult and is impossible to be a reality. But we have to redefine the relation, our relation as a human being with the animal proteins, because it's true that it's not any more sustainable. But we have to redefine the rules in all the food process, because as well, if now, what happens if we go crazy plant vegetables in all the land using a lot of water? So we are gonna create another problem, different problem from the animal protein. So I think we have to redefine the rules of consume food, and I think the role of the big restaurant and big names in gastronomy in the whole world is to be an example. So we have to take action to say to the people that they can eat different and they can eat more healthy. And it's true that the last years maybe the human being goes crazy with the animal protein and didn't understand that we are killing the planet. So it's something that we have to change right now. We have to change it by yesterday, so we are going late.
Antonio, what do you think? I hear here that David says, yeah, they have to be an example. Do you think that chefs also should take responsibility? That's something different, eh? What do you think?
Yes, well, for me, sustainability is really a personal path, you know. It's not something that you can reach one day and you say to yourself, okay, now I'm sustainable. That's why maybe we have to communicate in a really more concrete way what is for every restaurant being real sustainable. If you ask me, are you sustainable now? I will answer no, of course I'm not. But I'm totally aware of the impact, the big impact that I have with my work in terms of energy that I spend, in terms of human energy also, of course, of waste. But I think the most important thing that we as chefs can do for the future is to change the perception of luxury, you know? And that's why I tell all the time to my guests and even to the people who work with me, what is luxury for me is not caviar, it's not a rare tuna or something that is rare in terms of numbers, is what you pay so much in the market because it's rare. Every time you take away something from the nature that is rare, you are taking out some biodiversity in a way also. So if you want to change the perception of luxury, you have to start from that. Maybe sometimes is a real luxury having something that has no price in the market, that you cannot buy, that is, you know, so local that you cannot find in the big city. So maybe using everything from a zucchini is luxury for me, you know, giving the right flavor in a dish with only one ingredient, using modern techniques and the knowledge that we have, changes a little bit the perception that the guests have at the end at the table of that poor ingredient. And this is what I do really daily. This is the heart of my work. And being Italian, we raised and with the poor ingredients that really you recognize as Italian at its best, you know. I think about the cheese, the vegetables, but I think also about beans, lentils, every poor ingredient that we have, the biodiversity that we have in Italy is something that everybody envy. And so maybe my work is, you know, having the right price for the guests at the end of the dinner, because this is so important. The guests have to understand that when they pay me and they have eaten only tomatoes and poor ingredients, they have paid, you know, the correct price. And this is something that we as chefs can do. And it's, I think it's really the first step to perceive what is luxury again in our times, and maybe change a little bit the perception of the guests of our work.
Well, I see that Lisa is totally agreeing and nodding yes all the time, but Joris, I'm first coming to you. So in your restaurant RIJKS, what particular changes have you seen in sustainability, for example?
Well, first of all, sustainability, what does it mean? Because if you talk to someone from Wageningen, from the university, they did a lot of calculations, for example, on chicken. Mm-hmm. And they calculated that like a bio-industry mass-produced chicken has a much less big footprint than, for example, a very traditional chicken that grows really slow, the chicken that I would prefer. But this chicken has a much bigger footprint than a chicken that grows in 6 weeks. So it's also always like a way of interpretation on the subject and on the word sustainability. So therefore, I would also say like the word sustainable could be a dangerous word as well. So don't always believe that sustainable is good, because then we would all eat the same chicken everywhere in the world, and that means less biodiversity. And more biodiversity means more biosecurity, because if you have the same chicken everywhere in this world and you get the chicken disease, like, it's finished. So it's also something that you should discuss about always and always and always.
And what would you suggest then as a solution? To work with agreements, stickers, to use another word?
As long as you think about what you use, which techniques you use, which produce you use, and you can have good arguments to do that, then for me that's good enough, and I won't call it sustainable. And like, which role do we have as chefs? We are promoters of what we do, of which produce we use and which techniques we use, and we believe in what we do. Well, I think at least these chefs is good. So this is what we can do, and we can inspire other people. I think that's our role.
So Lisa, what will you add? You with all your expertise, knowledge, everything you have seen.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be here, and I think that as a journalist and author, and now as the National Geographic Professor of Science Communication at George Washington University here in Washington, D.C., where I am located right now, I know feeding a hot, hungry planet is a big area of interest. I guess I would say, finally, I've been writing about this for about the last 7-8 years, and it's really become and emerged as having a seat at the table in the sustainability conversation. So, I think that we know that creating a sustainable food system in the face of a changing climate isn't easy, and we know that we've heard from these innovators right here, including you all as chefs, as leaders in this context, right along with the thinkers and researchers such as Professor in Zanten and agriculturalists around the world. They're making real progress. And we also, what I've understood is we need to move beyond thinking about the environment, with our land and our water and air, only as sources of inputs into the food system, but also recognize that global environmental changes can diminish yields and reduce the amount of food we produce, and also affect how nutritious it is. We were talking a little bit about chicken, and also some around, maybe it was the earlier panel speaking around aquaculture, and their use of various antibiotics and so on for those types of applications, or that type of production has really serious implications for our health. So we can go deep into the weeds, but understanding that how we have whole suite of things that is affecting our food security, and figuring out how society can sustainably grow more food, and how people might try to do that under climate change and in a sustainable context with our growing our growing population, really is a challenge. I know that over my many years of reporting on food systems, and climate change, it's already led to a lot of political instability in some places, and so we haven't even begun to talk about that. But we know that creating sustainable food systems is possible. Trying to buy locally sourced foods, being flexible, and including more, plant-forward menus, and not necessarily entirely vegan, but having that flexible ability to source locally, but also include high-quality, locally produced meats, will be a way that chefs can lead in this aspect. And I'm now leading a new generation of young people who are telling these stories of food sustainability. I just led over the summer reporting fellows here in the United States, supported by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, what it takes to produce food healthfully as well as sustainably. But I think that we know that the threats to our food systems have challenged us to think more deeply about the actions and best practices that we can employ to have a more resilient menu. I think when I first started out reporting on this subject my goal was to have a seat at the table in these conversations and look at this. This is a really happy time for me that we're actually talking about this. But we know that there's new disciplines such as environutrition and agroecologists that are helping understand this, maybe some new models here. And again, the plant-forward diets and reducing food waste, which I've heard around here, sort of utilizing these fresh, local, seasonal ingredients, not only to improve the health of the environment, but also our own personal and economic health. And I want to mention that as well. It's been talked about a little bit. We know that sustainability is environmental sustainability, but it's also the issue of equity. When we talk about equity, that is also making sure that farmers are paid and recognized for their contributions, as well as the economics of the producers or the chefs and restaurateurs who are paid for the value that they're creating. And so I think that we have leaders among you, chefs and NGOs and policymakers and consumers that can work all together to make this a sustainable system. And I think that one of the key takeaways that I always tell people that I talk to, because often I'm talking at very big levels or talking specifically about some farmers. I traveled to Colombia, for instance, and met with a variety of farmers doing silvopastoral grazing, and they're, reporting on the cattle production that they have and dairy production, and not calling cattle production eco-bad no matter what, but inviting them into the conversation of understanding what it takes. But in those conversations, I'm always left with the idea that we all have a role to play, and that is for us to understand how much goes into producing our food and to not waste anything that we can. So it's great to see the presentation about how we can have that circular economy to feed and to feed some of our animals, some of the, I guess, the other pieces of food that we aren't eating ourselves. So that's really my point here, is we can foster this holistic, solutions-oriented perspective as a whole, rather than address these as individual crises or individual problems. It'll take us a while, but it's having this conversation at this level that's really needed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you you stated very clearly what sustainability is according to you. But Anna, I had a question for you, because often, and we saw it in the presentation also of Hannah, is that we are talking about food waste, working with local products. According to you, I had the impression that for you, it is also the way we interact with people, with team, with guests. Is that also sustainable?
Well, yeah, actually, I think I was pretty clear before that sustainability is not that small word that we are relying to when we think about almost being a vegetarian or vegan, because you think this works. Because I'll tell you a small story, which is really like, I think it gives you a lesson about how much we misunderstand things. So I think it was like a few years ago, I was invited in January to a dinner to a very rich couple who wanted to support the Harvard program, to change the idea how people should eat and transform a lot of vegetables into something that we would understand as a protein and somehow, start enjoying. And so that was like a cold January, minus 15 degrees outside, and I was served like red bell peppers and Chinese mushrooms. So I honestly asked the couple at the end, to be honest, what is sustainable in serving me a Chinese mushroom and red bell pepper in January, where there is no season? It means they were probably growing in a greenhouse, which means so much, what? It's actually much worse than actually hunting a roebuck behind the house, because we are really full with wildlife and it needs to be balanced. And sometimes people say to me, why serving a bear in Hiša Franko? And I'm like, because we have too many bears and we need to balance the nature as people have been balancing the nature 100 years ago. So is do you think that is not sustainable? What is less sustainable? Eating a roebuck in winter when it's supposed to be hunted, or like eating a Chinese mushroom or red bell pepper? Now, it's a good question. Let's put it on a topic, because it needs to be clear that, as David said before, and I completely agree with him, if we all become vegans or vegetarians, where the hell are we going to grow the vegetables? Tell me. There is no more space in this planet to grow vegetables. People are even thinking about creating islands on the sea, where with the moving of the sea, that we create the energy to produce vegetables. We need to start thinking that the sustainable way of eating is balanced eating. We should start eating less, yes, all of us, me included, and probably start eating more balanced, thinking over season, territory, and what we can and should consume. It's something I will 100% stand behind. And I'll let you know another story. I have 2 crazy farmers on 900 meters having 12 hectares of land, completely biodynamic. We don't even water the gardens. Everything is completely naturally produced. Like, if there is a dry period, we have no harvest. Just the day I was coming to Amsterdam via Italy, where I was cooking, I processed 15 kilos of basil, because we had to harvest the basil because the rain is coming. And they were like, we have to harvest the basil. And I was like, what am I going to do with the basil? Anna, it's your idea. You have to figure out something. But I did. I still have all my hands dirty, but I was on the back of the kitchen working out that basil. But I believe, like, catching that moment, catch it. Having 2 young people, 7 young people, tomorrow 300 young people working in a mountain in a beautiful terroir. Maybe that is sustainable, following the season, following the moon, following the whatever. But, and I'll get back to the principal point, we should not exclude things, and we should not be paranoid about, like, whoever is eating meat is now a criminal. No, he's not a criminal. Maybe we should just learn how to live in a balance with the nature, and how tick-tock, the life is going, and how we feel. Like, probably if you eat 700 grams of meat per day, you don't feel all right.
Okay.
And probably that is not the
But then, for example, I have the question, because in the beginning you mentioned, people who eat in my restaurant are local people. So, David, for example, imagine you are a completely real, good, sustainable, fine dining restaurant, but people come from all over the world to your place, taking airplanes, cars. Is that then still a sustainable fine dining restaurant?
No, but we are living in a not sustainable world. Apart from the food, this is our reality. You know, from apart to now, from that time to now, it looks like everyone have an opinion about sustainability, and it's true, like he says, that it depends who is talking about. It might be different conversation. And sometimes it looks like football. Everyone have a different opinion, and everyone looks capable to speak about sustainability. You know, I can understand some examples of restaurants, like Anna restaurants, that they are trying to be very sustainable, and maybe they are very sustainable. But this is just on the way, okay, but it's almost there. But this is just a small piece of the puzzle. The main problem is that sometimes the chefs, we have to prove sometimes that we have a solution for the global non-sustainable world about food or whatever. And to be honest, I do have my opinion, and it's true that we have to change a lot of things. It's true that I understand that our relation with the food as a human being and with the animal protein is wrong and goes crazy by the time. But I think I'm not capable to talk about the solution for the sustainability, because I'm just a chef and I can try to do my restaurant more sustainable, but the main problem, the big problem, is in the governments of the big countries. So this is as I say, the chefs, we can be an example and we can inspire to other people. But the main problem is in the governments of the big countries. If we don't really start as associative, apart from the chef, to change how we vote in different governments and how we change the world. At the end, it's like if you just throw in the small stones to the seaworld. It doesn't make difference.
Because Hannah, for example, in your presentation, you were giving a presentation about sustainability. I had the impression that it was more about environment sustainability than, for example, social sustainability, the way you work with employees, the way you pay them for their work per hour. No? Are you also working on other kinds of sustainability?
Was it question for me? Sorry.
Yes, Hannah, no problem. Because in your presentation, you were talking about sustainability and especially environmental sustainability. But what about the social sustainability, the way people work, the way they are rewarded for their work, the employment itself, for example?
Yeah, so indeed in the work, my main research focuses on the role of how we can actually feed a growing population with healthy food within the boundaries of our planet. So I don't really dive into the social dynamics. That's also what I mentioned in the beginning, like there are several aspects of sustainability. So we have the social part, the people part, then we have the profit part, and we have the planet part.
Yes.
And it's actually that whole complexity that we need to embrace. I do work there together with other researchers to get a more complete picture.
Okay, indeed, the triple P. Lisa, yes, you want to add something?
I want to echo what she said, because the cascade of effects and relationships across all these systems are so complex and variable, and we all need to move beyond a simple story. And so that's one way that I think we're all feeling it. I think we're thinking, oh, it's just the meat, or oh, it's just the land, or oh, it'll take just this more vegetables. It's not the case. Any successful answer to feeding this ourselves nutritionally and in a way that's sustainable will result from these continual changes and shifts and adaptations to what's available, what is sustainable now, and what kind of leverage points that we may have within our governments and institutions, and as leaders, like as chefs, as leaders in this incredible food culture that you have. I also want to mention that I will hopefully have the chance to be with you all next summer as I begin to work a little more on this as a Fulbright scholar in Amsterdam at the University of Amsterdam, looking at the water sustainability aspects of this. So we haven't even gone into that so much, but these environmental dynamics, as well as economic and social dynamics of equity, as well, the sustainability of the restaurants here, and they will all. It's not a simple story. These are individual choices, but as well as in the context of these larger systems.
Joris, if you hear this, what could you think? What could you change with your suppliers and your guests? Do you think you are able, as a chef or owner of a restaurant, to make changes?
Yeah, we can change what we do in our restaurant, in our environment, but there's always more. You can always take some extra steps. So, and one of the steps is making other people aware of what's going on. So we started a foundation a couple of years ago, Low Food, which is talking about the gastronomy of the lower countries. And we are very focusing on also social environmental health, and also environmental health, which for me is a totally different subject, like it's totally two different things, but they both talk about safety. So do the people that work in your restaurant feel safe? That's like the social part. And are we safe in the future? That's like the environmental general part. And with this foundation, we are focusing on three main topics. So first of all, it's about education. And in that part, you can talk about sustainability, in terms of produce and in terms of footprints, in terms of environment and everything, but also a lot about the social environmental health. And second of all, we are doing research, so we get more knowledge, and we are doing research in a different way than they do on the Wageningen University. We more do it in like a cowboy way, so we are, for example, we are always focusing, for us, sustainability. That's just a choice we took, is about waste or no waste, biodiversity, and the protein transition, where we're in the middle of it, actually. Well, just in the beginning, actually, of this journey. So with Low Food, we found funding to do research on those 3 topics. And so, for example, last year we finished 2 big researches on biodiversity, which one of them was about grains. So nowadays we use mostly one variety of grain, like a super grain. 95% of all the bread in the world is produced with one grain. And we used to have way more grains in the Netherlands. So we went to a seed bank to get all these grains and to do research on it. And we made like an essay. And this is like all of this is like open source research. So every chef or whoever can read what we found in our researches. And now also we just started last week a research on what we can do with plant-based waste from restaurants, from kitchens. So we know there's a lot, like the magic in a lot of dishes is like MSG, right? Like umami. So we are now researching if we can take like umami out of food waste from restaurants, and it's like all open source. So this is something we think we can do. So of course change the way or act in a good way in our restaurants, but also doing research and spread everything you find, share the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Antonia, we could also talk about food waste, but what would you, as we are almost at the end of this panel, this discussion, it's not really discussion because I have the impression you all share the same thoughts and spirit about sustainability, but how do you see it? What will you change actually?
Well, at my restaurant, as I said, we are really in a path, and I really think that every time we have, as an entrepreneur and chef, we have to choose where to put the money and the answer, and we give the good answer, you know, at the end of the day, and the good answer is giving maybe extra time for the equipe to think, and extra money to the suppliers who deserve more money. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know that you have done something good for the environment also. And this is my... During the lockdown, I had, as everybody else, more time to think and to do the research on my countryside. And I really put... my time and my money on those things. And this is my choice to have a biggest impact on my countryside. So I think if everybody does it, it's only a little start, because my awareness of being so little, as you said, it was my power. Every time I have the knowledge of how much I'm little, nearby the big system, I am feeling my freedom of choice and my power in a way. So, yes, the lockdown gave me this time to think, you know, to my countryside in a better way. So, thank you.
Some extra power. Maybe let's have a look at the audience if they already have questions for you. I think you all expressed very well what sustainability is for you and how do you do it and what you are going to change.
So, question. A very difficult one, as I believe, because nobody talks about. Sometimes I have the feeling about sustainability, we are taking this pink elephant we all know since ages, throwing it over the fence to the smallest piece, what are obviously in this case chefs. So, and say, now solve the problem we have. I strongly believe, and this is now the question, isn't it the right time to reconsider the way how we see and treat money? Because honestly, I believe economics drive everything.
Is that the answer? Or the question?
I strongly believe, so it's a subjective opinion. So, and it's an open question to be answered. So obviously we have some experts with data, statistics, professors, and you as chefs. So what would be the answer? Because again, I'm working for food industry as well, so money drives everything.
I think the only way of getting rid of like the importance of money is becoming self-sufficient, because you will never ever change. No one will give something for free or work for free. I cannot cook for free, line up a whole team of chefs and waiters for free. Impossible. So forget about that. That's probably a pink elephant. But then the only way to get rid of the value of money is to become self-sufficient. So a lot of answers probably lay in the past, but we all know that this world will not turn into a world where people become all self-sufficient. So I think we have to deal with the fact that money has a certain value, and then to respond on what you just said, you mentioned like give your suppliers more money, or never negotiate with your suppliers. Just trust that what they ask is the right price and is what they need to continue their work. And the same for our guests. It should be the same. There should be this trust that what we ask is what we need to create a healthy social environment in our restaurant where everyone gets well paid and we can pay our rent and everything. So then kind of the money still has value, but it's like you will not negotiate about it anymore. I think that would be my answer.
Yeah, fully understood, and I guess you're right, and I definitely do agree. But on the other hand, for you, as a chef, as a restaurant owner, it possibly works. But how about the industry, the seriously big drivers? So how about them? Because they need to pay as well. Yes. And sorry, the thing is, I think we are living in times where we have to consider also non-profit organizations. And I guess that's also something what goes somehow in your direction. There's so many SDGs defined by the United Nations. I believe currently everybody talks about food, but it is not the full solution. And politicians, honestly, and we are right now in public, I don't know how many people are listening right now, I believe they could do a little bit more.
Can I give you the answer? Because the answer exists. And I didn't want to open this topic because it's going to last until tomorrow. If you want that I talk to you about what happened during my lockdown. But I'll give you a small example and then I guess the answer. I have, and it's very honest now. We have 2 farmers on the quote of 900 meters working on 12 hectares of land. And they approached me 3 years ago. She's French-Canadian, he's Italian. They rented land and they said, we need a partner. Should we do a farm together? I was like, yeah. And then what happened? COVID came. And then these guys remained completely without money. And I said, I went to my accountant and the company Hiša Franko was on the knees because we weren't working for practically 18 months in a row. And I said, we will employ them. And my accountant was, are you crazy? And I was like, no, we will employ them. I need them. And believe me, it's an investment for the future. and we have employed them. Together, today, we are a happy family which is helping each other, and no one is looking for the profits. I'm not. I'm having the most incredible possible vegetable, and they are safe. She just got a baby. The baby has 6 weeks. She has social security. She has money to live. If we are not going to work, she will still keep the work, and she will still keep the job. That's regarding that sometimes it's not all about the profit, but it's also about our hearts. And believing in these things, believe me, it's giving us the future. But then the second project that Hiša Franko did excuse me, I will use my words because this is the answer, and it's a big answer. You know, when we went to the first lockdown, that was March 2020, Slovenia had one of the longest lockdowns that you can imagine. We were practically in 20 months, open 18 weeks. For the rest, there was no way we could work. There was no delivery. There is just cows living around us. And you know, after a month of the beginning of the lockdown, that was, I'm talking about spring 2020, the farmers started calling me and saying like, hey chef, can you take 1,000 lambs? And I was like, are you joking? Like, we're closed. Where can I put the 1,000 lambs? Then the dairy producers, they were like, we're throwing away every day 10,000 liters of milk. I'm not talking about 1,000 liters of milk. I'm talking about 10,000 liters of milk of high mountain production, where the cows need to walk, hard work, where the farmers depend just on them. So I called the Minister of Agriculture, personal call. I picked up the phone and I was like, Alexandra, where are you? I'm in the office. I was like, we are in a disaster here. Like, the farmers are collapsing. You need to do something. She was like, yeah, you know, there is gonna be like a subvention number 73/45 and check this and this. I was like, but I'm just a chef. I'm not a minister. I'm not someone who is working in social service. I mean, who are you? You are a minister. Go to the car and go and see what's going on. It's not me. I mean, I'm just the one who is actually helping to realize their food. But at the end, this is not my work. You know what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. So when Easter came, the farmers called me and they told me they are in a big trouble because they have lambs that they cannot sell. So the sheep needs to feed the lamb, so they didn't sell the lambs, but they cannot even make the milk, the cheeses, not the cottages. It's a disaster. People depend on that, and the small subvention is not helping them. So I called a friend who is a young manager, and I was like, Giga, listen, we are in trouble, and I really don't know what to do. My lockdown went like this. My team, and there is some people from my team here, we were sitting on the grass saying, how can we save 10,000 liters of milk per day? What can we do? They were like, chef, maybe we can do ice cream, maybe we can do the field pasta. And I was like, yeah, but who is going to produce that? Like, how can Hiša Franko produce 10,000 liters of ice cream per day? And I'm telling you this because it's a good example, and it is the answer. So this young manager said to me, Anna, business, money is the answer. Money is always the answer. No one wants to work for free but Anna, because I'm a bit stupid and I have too big heart. So he actually connected me to a few businessmen, and this is how Hiša Franko actually survived the lockdown, because I actually made a deal with the third biggest food chain supermarket in Slovenia, which is the only Slovenia one in Slovenia, which wanted to change a little bit the picture of who they are. And I said, you know what, let's do a deal. I give my face for it, and I'm giving my face for it, but just for this project. But we are going to help farmers. So we started saving product from product. We were searching, like, the sour milk is remaining, let's do something out of sour milk. My team has been involved. We created super creative recipes. Then we went to the industry, because we cannot do enough. Because it's not in words. We said meow meow in Hiša Franko. It's about really saving the product. And we were in small Slovenia, which has 1.9 million inhabitants. In 6 months, we sold 600,000 products, which were all based on farmers' products. What is the situation at the end? we saved farmers, we saved entire productions. I'm not joking. I have numbers. We trace things. We go behind things. It's not a joke. At the same time, my team was working. We divided the work between us. And you know what I did? The profit didn't go on me. I divided it by number of people who were working, and I divided it in team. So the team had actually the direct interest to work. They used their knowledge, but at the end, they were paid for it. They were paid for their work and for everything. And that's sustainability at the end. I will not get a Nobel Prize for it, but I honestly believe that, we all at the end will depend on our farmers. And we will, if my farmers die, I will die. I cannot work anymore. How is Hiša Franko gonna survive? We live 2.5 hours away from the cities. We need them, and that's the only way it goes. So I think putting the heart before the profit, because I didn't get anything from it, but maintaining my team completely entire, motivated, disciplined, and hey, my farmers survived like that. That's how I think this is one of the possible ways how it can go.
Give and take, well, that's what it is all about. And sometimes you get more by giving more. So, Anna, I would like to thank you for this very interesting and very emotional, lovely story. I see a lot of emotions in our audience, so thank you very much for sharing this, but not only for Anna, for all the panelists, because they're all making efforts to create a more sustainable world, not only for us, for my children, for hopefully one day my grandchildren. So I would like to ask one biggest round of applause for them, but also for you. David, Antonia, Joris, and of course Hannah, also a big thanks. For the moment we are saying goodbye. It's not a farewell, it's just see you another time, which means that the people who are here with us in Amsterdam will now enjoy a workshop offered by Perrier-Jouët Champagne. I've been tasting it, and I fell completely in love during lunch with their prestigious label named Belle Époque from Épernay region, where they approximately are bottling 3 million bottles annually. They are having 266 acres of vineyards in this Champagne region, and they were founded in 1811 by Pierre-Nicolas Pierrier and Rose Adelaide Jouët. So I would like to say enjoy the tasting, all they are offering. Once again, a big thanks to all our partners, not only the caviar and the champagne, but all of them who are here to organize with us 2 days filled to the brim with content, expertise and experiences. And then, of course, tomorrow, the 5th edition of the Best Chef Award. So hope I will be able to welcome you all over there. So ladies and gentlemen, for now, have a lovely evening and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.